Welcome back to Real Estate Simplified. Dorothy, separations and divorces are no fun whatsoever, but the fact remains that people have houses and they have to sell them when they're going through that separation process. So to kick things off, can you tell us about what a matrimonial home is? Because that word floats around quite a bit, but some people might not understand what it actually means.
All right. So a matrimonial home only occurs when there is matrimony. If you're not married, you don't have a matrimonial home. So again, going back to that idea that you have to be married to have a matrimonial home, and the matrimonial home gets special treatment in the legislation, in the Family Law Act specifically. And so if it is not a matrimonial home, i.e. you're not married, that legislation won't apply.
Gotcha. So somebody going through that divorce or separation process, let's say they want to, sell the home, they're for whatever reason. At what point can they actually sell it?
I do want to go back to your first question because there is something I wanted to add. Sorry, a matrimonial home is also the home that you're living in at the time of your separation. I left that out. So if you're not living in it, if it's not your habitual residence with you and your spouse, it's not a matrimonial home either, whether you're married or not. So your second question, sorry, was about, can you repeat that?
Yeah, at some point, people will want to sell their home when they're going through that divorce or separation. At what point can they sell it? Are there rules around it?
So they can sell it at any time if it's on consent. So both parties need to agree that they're going to sell it. If one party doesn't agree and they're both on title, they can be compelled to agree by a court order, but then you'd have to start a court proceeding. There is a little exception to the right to alienate your property, so you would have to have some pretty exceptional circumstances for a court not to order the sale of a home. The children's well-being, of course, will be taken into consideration. And apart from that, it would really be on consent, especially if you're just negotiating an agreement or you're not in court.
Yeah, and if only one person is on title, so let's say, for instance, the wife is on title, but the husband is not, do both parties need to agree to sell the home?
Yes, so because if it's a matrimonial home and you're living in it ordinarily, you're occupying it as your matrimonial home or family home, then yes, both spouses need to agree because there is no right of alienation under the current legislation for a home that is a matrimonial home. In fact, you can't even put encumbrances on the home, right? Even if it's a matrimonial home, so let alone sell it.
Yeah, and even outside of a divorce or separation, when a husband and wife, let's say only one of them is on title, the other spouse has to give spousal consent on the listing agreement paperwork before the property can get listed and sold. So
correct.
Yeah.
So the real estate agents there must also look out for that.
Yeah, those real estate agents, they have to stay on top of all their paperwork.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so there are situations where maybe for whatever reason one party is refusing to sell, but maybe one party wants to buy out, so take over the other party's interest in the property, buy them out. Can somebody force a buyout in that case?
So no, no one can force anyone to sell to a specific party. So the court doesn't have the ability to make you sell your interest, for example, to your spouse or to anyone else for that matter. So if a spouse wants to purchase the other spouse's share, they have to do it on agreement. And if the spouse doesn't agree, the selling spouse, so to speak, that spouse can ask for a court order again to sell the home. The spouse who wants to purchase the first spouse's share can compete on the market to purchase the home, which is strange because you'd be competing for your own home, but you can do it. I don't think that it's a smart thing to do, but if parties can't come to an agreement on the sale, then they can compete on it on the market, but then you are incurring all those other fees that go with selling on the market. Whereas if you can come to an agreement together, you might be able to avoid that depending on what kind of agreement you come to.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess the thought process there is that you don't want to penalize the other party by not giving the free market a chance to value the home. Is that right?
It's a give and take, right? You can both gain something from selling to one another, and you can both gain something from selling on the market. When you're doing a buyout, you would get a valuation done. You can get a professional valuation done, or you can just get like comparables done or an assessment done of the value of the home. You can engage a real estate agent to do that. And so you can, figure out what the market value is when you are coming to an agreement to buy it just between yourselves. And like I said, if you can agree to a price, you would be avoiding those extra, incidental costs that you would incur if you were to sell it on the market. So if you get a good valuation and a good assessment as to what it would, be listed for, and also taking into consideration what it would actually sell for, you can come to a good amount where you can feel whole, where both parties can feel whole walking away from that.
Yeah, for sure. Now, when it comes to investment properties, because a lot of people will own like an extra property, maybe a couple, does anything change with the investment properties if one person is on title only?
So an investment property, if you're not living in it at the time, so if it's not your habitual residence at the time that you're selling and you're married, then it's not your matrimonial home. If you're the only party on title to that property, then it's treated as any other property. If you're joint owners, of course, then that changes, because then you can't sell a property where there's another owner that's not in agreement with that sale.
Yeah, so great. Now, I may know really well a person who's a big fan of the show 90 Day Fiancé, and prenups are a big topic on that trashy TV show.
Great.
What are some considerations some people should have when they're talking about prenups? I know there's a different term here in Ontario, where somebody owns property already and they're bringing that into the relationship. So
it's a cohabitation or marriage contract in Canada. And what are the considerations? Well, the considerations would be, what do you want? Well, you should seek the advice of a lawyer. You should become informed about what your rights would be if you separate, under Ontario law, and you're married or you're cohabiting for a length of time, versus what you can contract out of. Right? Because if you have a cohabitation agreement or a marriage contract drafted, you can contract out of a lot of the current legislation. There are some things that you cannot contract out. For example, you cannot put in your agreement that you're going to kick your spouse out of the home, right? So you can't kick a spouse out of the home. People can do a lot of things with contracts, though. Mm-hmm. And so that's a really situation-specific question as to what you can achieve. You would want to specifically look at your matrimonial home. You would want to make sure that, if you're coming in to the marriage or into a relationship with a property, and if you want to protect that interest, especially if you're the only one on title, you want to make sure that you do get the appropriate legal advice with regards to what you want to do with that and how you want to share perhaps the growth in that property with your spouse, and how you will be sharing expenses, or how you'll be sharing contributions to that property, so that if there is a separation, you can make sure that it's a fair and equitable kind of arrangement on separation.
And you definitely just want to get some tailored legal advice so you get the right stuff put into your agreement.
Yes.
Good stuff. Excellent. Well, coming up after the break, we'll be talking about how you can get back into the market after a divorce or separation. Stay tuned.